Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Greater Miami Expressway Agency June 2025 Board Meeting, and I would like to call our meeting to order at 9:02 a.m. I would like to ask Board Member Peterman to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. Please be seated. Now we'll ask our Corporate Board Secretary to conduct a roll call of all board members.
Good morning.
Morning.
Board Member Blanco.
Present.
Board Member Iglesias.
Present.
Board Member Peterman. Board Member Rigaud.
Present.
Treasurer Pages.
Present.
Vice Chair Perez.
Present.
Chair Cancio.
Present.
We're all here.
Next, we have a declaration of voting conflicts. Board members, at this time, please advise if you have any conflicts based on the items on the consent agenda or regular agenda. Now let's move to our public comment period for the agenda items. If a member of the public wishes to address the board, you will be given 3 minutes to speak. I will now recognize our interim executive director to identify those members of the public who have signed up to speak or that would like to speak.
Good morning, Madam Chair. There are no persons currently signed up to speak, and I'm looking at the audience to see if there's anybody who would like to speak, and I don't see anybody, so we can move on.
Thank you, Mr. Garcia. Next, we have the approval of the meeting minutes from our prior meeting in April. Board members, you have had the opportunity to review the minutes. Is there any discussion or is there a motion for approval of the meeting minutes?
I'll move to approval.
I second.
Any discussion? Okay. Any discussion? No? Okay. All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
Any nays? Hearing none, the motion passes. We will now move on to item 7 on our agenda, the public hearing relating to the board approval of fiscal year 2026 annual budget and 5-year work program for fiscal years 2026 to 2030. The public hearing is now open. I will ask the agency's Chief Operating Officer and Chief Financial Officer to provide us with the background information for this public hearing.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Because we did such a good job at the workshop, it's going to make this really easy. The only thing that changed actually is the back office cost, the shared cost with the state. So we got the information from them and it went up by 1.3 million, which is actually a good thing because on their point of view, that since it's volume based, so they're assuming that we're going to have a lot more volume than we think. So conservatively, they put it higher, and at the end of the year anyway, when the actual cost comes in, there's always a true-up. So we're not really concerned about this, and we maintain our COVID ratio anyway, well above what's required. So that's the only one change that happened to operating expense. On the work program side, it's really not a change because the dollar amounts did not change. The total remained the same. We just shifted. For a particular project, we shifted the cost from fiscal year 25, which we're not going to do, and we put it onto 26. And that project is 362 in the package. And it's just a shift from one year to the next. And that's basically what changed between the time we did the workshop and now. So we're asking that you would pass the budget.
Well, thank you. And I just wanted to repeat again that we really enjoyed the workshop. It was very fruitful, and we received very good information. I think all the board members that were present really appreciated all the information and the discussions that we had at that meeting. So it makes our job easier now.
Thank you. It was a collaborative work, and it worked well. Thank you so much.
Do you have anything to add, Mr. Diaferia? No?
No, we're like Sandy said, this is a budget that we're very proud of. The changes are minimal, and the coverage ratio only went down by 0.01. So we recommend approval of the 5-year work program and the annual budget for 2026.
Do any members of the public wish to be recognized? Bless you. Anybody would like to be recognized? If not, we're going to close the public comment period. As there are no public comments at this time, the public hearing portion of the meeting is now closed. Are there any questions or comments from members of the board on this item? Board Member Peterman, any questions?
No, I was
Okay.
just going to move approval of the budget.
Okay. So is there a motion to approve the fiscal year 2026 annual budget and 5-year work program for fiscal years 2026-2030?
Move it. I move
Is
it.
a first? Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any nays? Hearing none, motion passes. So now we'll move to the consent agenda. Mr. Jason Gonzalez, GMX General Counsel, shall read the consent agenda items on the record.
Madam Chair, the consent agenda items include the GMX program work number 11205, the interconnector ramps from Miami to State Road 112. Excuse me. And the second is the GMX work program number 83611-001, State Road 836, the I-95 interchange improvements. That's the approval of resolution number 25-02, transferring property ownership to the Greater Miami Expressway Agency for parcels acquired under the project. The third is the GMX work program number 87410-001, State Road 874, ramp connector to the southwest 128th Street. The fourth item is the GMX work program number 87410-001, State Road 874, ramp connector to the southwest 128th Street. The fifth item on the consent agenda is GMX work program number 92404-001, State Road 924 extension west to the Homestead extension of the Florida Turnpike. The sixth item is the GMX work program number 92404-001, State Road 924 extension west to the Homestead extension of the Florida Turnpike. And finally, the State of Florida Retirement System Senior Management Services, that's the SMS class reinstatement. That is all, Madam Chair. Back to you.
Do we have any discussion? I just wanted to address something with council on the State of Florida Retirement System Senior Management Service, the reinstatement. I understand that there's some current positions now that we're going to go to the legislature and ask them to retroactively add them to the plan,
Yes, Madam Chair.
that this applies for those that left the agency recently or are retiring, correct?
Yes, Madam Chair.
But certain senior managers here at the agency that are not leaving at the moment, we're going to try to add them to this
Correct. At the
retroactively.
direction of the board, I think that is the plan for the legislative agenda.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question.
Yes.
Is that going to be like a standalone bill? Is that something that will maybe go into a legislative package of DOT?
I think that is still to be determined. We could propose it as a standalone bill. There's always risks if you're part of the larger DOT bill, but there are benefits as well, depending on the political environment at the time. So that's something I think staff will discuss, and then we've got a little bit of time to come back to the board and get approval for the plan.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Board Member Peterman.
does it require legislative action for this to happen, or is it an administrative process for, I thought that the agency decided which positions qualify for senior management.
There are some designations in statute, but the agency does have some discretion on defining some of that. I think maybe we could just do a full report at the next meeting as to what we would, as legal counsel, propose be done in a legislative addition to the actions that the board can take.
Thank you very much. Any further discussion? So we now move to item 9, the regular agenda, and now we'll recognize our interim executive director to introduce item A. Do we
Yeah,
need to
Madam Chair, we
move?
need a motion for the.
We need a
consent.
motion for the consent agenda. Is there a motion?
I'll move. I second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Any nays? Motion passes. So now we'll move to item 9, the regular agenda, and I'll recognize our interim executive director to introduce item A in today's regular agenda.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The first item on our regular agenda today is the board's approval of the combined sale of parcel numbers 136, 137, 138, 139B, and 499W to the proposer with the highest purchase price. These parcels were listed for sale on March 7th, 2025, and the agency received an offer in the amount of $1,785,000, which is equal to the GMX listed price. Staff is requesting board approval to negotiate final terms and enter into a contract to convey these parcels in accordance with GMX policy. And I would ask our agency's Chief Operating Officer, Claudia Diaferia, to provide the board with an overview of the item for consideration. Claudia?
Yes, good morning, board members.
morning.
So this is one of the parcels that was already approved by the board for sale, and this was the only group of parcels that we had not received the bid last time we presented these items to the board. This time around, we did receive a bid at the appraised value, and it's a grouping. As you can see, there's a inset there. It's parcels 136, 37, 38, 139B, and 499. It's a grouping. It's quite an odd shaped parcel. It's cut by the Metro Rail. It's a kind of an odd shape, a rhombus, and so we're looking to sell this parcel. It's not a good parcel for us to keep. It's a habitual dumping ground, and also for homeless encampments. So we're asking for approval to sell the parcel, and is not going to be needed for a future project.
Thank you. Any discussion?
Just to confirm, this is the property that we discussed at previous meetings where there were homeless encampments right along the 112.
That is correct.
Is that
It's
right?
on the south side of State Road 112, on the west side of the corner.
Right.
And it's just, it's been an issue for us for quite some time now.
And with the upcoming improvements to 112, we don't need that property for staging or anything else? Is that right?
That's correct. The two parcels that we kept are on the east side of
Okay.
37, because that's where the future on-ramp and off-ramp would be. On the west side, there's no possibility to actually build anything, because that's right where the Metro Rail turns. So
Okay.
we really can't do anything there.
Very good, thank you.
Is there a motion to approve?
Move.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Any nays? Motion passes. So now I ask our interim executive director to introduce item B in our regular agenda. Mr. Garcia?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Item B in our regular agenda today relates to GMX work program number 83611-001, which is State Road 836 I-95 interchange improvement. The matter is presented to the board today for your approval of condemnation resolution number 25-07 for parcel number 739 for the purpose of ramp repairs. The reason for the condemnation is to secure a temporary aerial easement for the public purpose of facilitating improvements to the ramp from southbound I-95 to the northwest 14th Street exit. GMX staff have attempted to negotiate a license agreement with the owner of parcel 739 for well over a year now, but the lack of a response from the owner makes it necessary for GMX to proceed with condemnation proceedings in order to complete construction of the required improvements. Staff are therefore requesting approval of this condemnation resolution, and once again, I will ask Mr. Diafadia to provide additional information on this agenda item.
So yes, this agenda item, we're at a point where we've been, as the executive director just mentioned, over a year now of negotiating. The original intent was to do a license agreement. This is for the construction, let me rephrase that. This is for the delivery of materials to our construction site. The plan is to put a crane at the bottom of the cul-de-sac that's adjacent to A36, and we already have the permits to do so. Unfortunately, we have to fly over this parcel. We have to swing the crane over it. So we're not using the parcel in any way, shape, or form. We're not entering the parcel. So it's just for an aerial easement for the times when we fly over material over the parcel to deliver to the site where we are building, because it's a very confined area. We're still in negotiations with the owner, so there is still potential that we may resolve this through a license agreement. But at this moment in time, given the history in the last year, we don't have the time to wait, because we don't want to delay the 83611 project in any way, shape, or form. So we're asking for approval of this condemnation. Hopefully, I can come back to the board next August and say that we did resolve it through a license agreement, but we want to preserve our right and the process now.
And what is the cost of this condemnation?
So the total cost of the condemnation is $26,280 plus legal fees. So it'll be our legal fees and any legal fees that they must incur as well. But we don't anticipate that being, it'll be less than $10,000.
In legal fees?
Correct.
Any further discussions on this item? All those in favor, is there a motion to approve?
I'll move it. Second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, say nay. Motion passes. I'll recognize Mr. Garcia for the next item in our regular agenda.
Thank you. This third item in our regular agenda today concerns GMX procurement contract number GMX 16-01, program number 83611-101, design build services for the reconstruction of State Road 836, I-395, from west of Northwest 17th Avenue to I-95 Midtown Interchange in Miami-Dade County. The item is presented to the board today for approval of supplemental agreement number 12 of the design build contract with Archer Western Des Moines Joint Venture in the amount of $1 million. Is that $1 million?
1,475,000.
1 million, yeah.
Yeah, $475,000. This amount corresponds to 5 separate items, which include the Wagner Creek culvert repair, the 17th Avenue drainage pipe desilting, Ramp K redesign of the MSC wall, Hurricane Ian related securing of construction site as a result of the declared state of emergency, and a contingency replenishment for any future unforeseen work. Mr. Diafadia, would you like to provide us with additional information on this agenda item, please?
Yes, this supplemental number 12 primarily consists of 2 major items. One of them is very much needed. It's the repair of the culvert for Wagner Creek. As you just east of Miami River Bridge, most people don't realize it when they're driving over it, but it's the culvert. It's the only structure in our system that's not rated as excellent or better. We knew that this was coming. We had actually built it into the RFP, into the project. They were going to inspect it, and then depending on the condition, the repairs would be determined. As such, here we are. So we've negotiated $812,000 for the full repair of that structure. So once we complete this work, all of our structures will be in excellent or better condition. So this is definitely important for us to take care of now, because we don't want to affect the traveling public twice. Once we finish this job, we want to go back in the same area. We're there now. We should take care of it now. And the second large item here is the $400,000. This is the contingency. This is typical on most of our construction jobs. We have contingency items that are kind of the smaller items of work that we issue through work orders. It's things like itinerary repairs, lighting repairs, things like that, sweeping, cleaning. And we're about to deplete our current $400,000 contingency, so we're requesting approval to fund it up again to $400,000.
I have a question regarding this $400,000 contingency fund that we have, I think, in all the different projects.
That's correct. It varies in size, and this is the largest project we have currently, and so it's $400,000.
Is there like an accounting of how the 400 gets depleted or used?
Absolutely. Yeah, there's a very detailed log of exactly what work orders get approved under those $400,000. Yeah, so they go through the whole chain through staff for approval, and they also go through the FDOT side of approval because we have a CI that oversees the project.
Thank you.
Do we know what the average use of the contingency replenishments in past projects is on the average? I mean, do we use 25%? Do we use 50?
It really depends on the complexity, the size, and most importantly, the length of the job, right? Smaller jobs tend to have smaller usage of it, and it depends on the risk. You have very straightforward jobs that usually don't have them. In a project this size, this complex, with so many incidents that happen on a frequent basis, and the fact that we're going on 5.5 years now, it's typical for us to have depleted it at this point in time. We do it slightly different than FDOT. FDOT kind of sets a percentage of the job. We don't do that, but that's something that internally we're looking at potentially changing moving forward.
Is this the first time that this gets depleted, or?
This is the second time it gets depleted.
So we're talking about, we already went over 800,000.
That's correct.
Not on this project, right? Just
This
in-
project.
Okay.
This is the second time we would be replenishing the contingency. I can most likely, well, not most likely, I can definitely provide a log of all the expenditures that have been used up previously, if anyone is interested.
What was the total cost of this project for us?
For us, it's 286 all in, I believe, right? 279, sorry. $279 million.
Okay.
So, like, for example, these are items like the RFP actually didn't call for repairs of attenuators, so that's usually sometimes that's on the contractor. That's typical for DOT as well. When anybody crashes into a barrier wall or anything like that, we have to pay the contractor to replace the asset.
So I want to be clear, and I want everybody else to understand. This $400,000 contingency is not on the $1.4 million.
It's part of the 1.4, correct?
I know, but it's not. It's based on the entire project, right?
Correct.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, the $400,000 is there for use of the smaller items that are paid through work orders.
Okay.
So it's an unknown. We don't know what's, there's still 2-3 years left on the job. We don't know, how many guardrails are going to hit, things like that.
Right. So on a $279 million project, we've got $800,000 of contingencies.
Yeah, that's the
thus
point
far.
I was trying to
Thus far.
make.
Right.
Right. It's not on a $1.4 million project, because that's 30-something
Yeah,
percent.
no, and that was my point. I thought it was $1
Yeah,
million
yeah.
too. I say that's outrageous, but that's a pretty reasonable thing.
Okay.
I understand we're owed money still on some of these sections, right? Is that right?
On the project?
Yeah.
There's one item that's still pending with the county that we're resolving, and
Right.
in fact, the authorization that the board just did for the approval of condemnation is tied to that. It's
Okay.
ramp K. So there was a pipe that was leaking underneath one of our MSC walls, and it created a void. And so we are now in the process of repairing it, and that condemnation is basically to deliver the material to that area.
How much is that?
So we estimated it's roughly $3.1 million.
That's the one with Miami-Dade Water and Sewer.
That is correct.
Yeah.
And
But remember, we're not selling any parcels to the county until we get paid.
I understand. But the $3 million is something that came out of contingency or came out of the project? How did we fund that?
No, actually, that was approved by the board as a separate
Separate
supplemental
item.
agreement.
Okay.
Because anything that's above a certain threshold must come to the board for approval. The executive director's threshold is he can sign up to $2 million or 20%, whichever is less. Whichever is more. And anything above that has to come to the board. So that item had previously come to the board for approval.
When I asked for the 279, the $3 million was included in the 279, or is that an addition? That's a totally separate number.
That's not including the.
Okay, that's fine. Right,
No,
thank you.
actually, that's not true. That is including the 3 million because the board has already approved it. We're now just requesting reimbursement.
But that's part of the whole project cost.
Yes, that's
Okay,
correct.
very good. Thank you.
Hearing no further discussion, is there a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, say nay. Hearing none, the motion passes. We will now move on to item D on the regular agenda, and I will once more recognize Mr. Garcia to introduce the item.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This next item on our regular agenda is item D. It relates to GMX procurement contract number RFP 25-01, inspection and reporting services for GMX structures. We are requesting approval from the board of the Technical Evaluation Committee's recommendation to select and enter into contract with the two highest ranked proposers. GMX released a request for proposal on January 4th, 2025, seeking proposals from qualified firms to provide inspection and reporting services for GMX structures. The selected firms will be responsible for inspecting various structures. The highest ranked proposer in this procurement was Marlin Engineering, and the second highest ranked company was Transsystems Corporation, doing business as Transsystems Corporation Consultants. I would ask Mr. Diaferia to provide you with further background on this agenda item.
So this item is for the approval of the two highest ranked proposers, which is Marlin Engineering and Transsystems. They are actually the incumbents in the contracts. This contract we utilize for all the inspection of all of our structures. So this includes culverts, bridge structures, overhead signs, anything that has a structural member on it. Both of these firms have been doing an excellent job. Both of them are rated excellent or better in their contractor performance evaluations. We would have liked to see a little bit more competition in this solicitation. We did confirm with procurement that there were many firms that downloaded the documents and were interested. However, we only received 2 bids. I think maybe given the technical nature of these services, that's probably the reason. We did reach out to some of the firms as to why they hadn't bid, and some of them indicated obviously the very specific nature of these services and the fact that these incumbents are very strong. And I think the last point that some of them made as well is that in this particular solicitation, we have a 15% local business requirement and a 15% small business requirement. So that basically means that 30% of the contract has to be from the prime given out to one of these, either an SB or an LB. So some of these smaller firms rather go in and assure themselves a win with a SB or an LB versus trying to compete as a prime. Nonetheless, we will continue the efforts to get as many contractors and consultants to bid in all of our solicitations. With that said, we are very happy with the 2 incumbents, and so we're recommending approval to award the contract. The term of the contract is 4 years initially, with 2 approvals pending board approval.
So how often do they conduct inspections?
So every structure gets inspected biennially, so every 2 years. And the reason we have 2 firms is that way you never have the same firm seeing the same bridge twice in a row. We go a step further in that. We make sure that the same inspector doesn't see it the following inspection. That way we're always having a rotation of who's inspecting the structure.
I had a question on the requirements.
Yes, Vice Chair.
I know you mentioned the LB and the small business. Are those requirements, are we following FDOT? Is that
No.
what those percentages are? And just trying to figure out if
We
we
have
can
different
expand the
percentages.
folks.
Yeah, per
replying to
policy,
that.
we have a 10% minimum for small business participation. And it's 0 for LB, but we have a goal of also trying to meet 10%. So these are not the same as FDOT. FDOT has SBE goals, and there's DBE goals. I'm sorry, not SB. We use small business, so we use a different system than DOT.
Yeah, I'm just trying to figure out how we can make sure that we get the proper amount of folks competing for these businesses. I mean, for these projects to make sure, it's all part of the cost and all that.
Right. So
boils
we're
down
doing actually an effort internally. Michelle Hicks-Levy, who's no, not in the audience, but
She's right there.
oh, sorry, I didn't see you. So we're doing an outreach before to make sure that we're alerting all the consultants or contractors that are able to bid on this. Right, we use the FDOT pre-qualification, so we reach out to all the firms that are local or that could potentially bid, and then we're also doing kind of a follow-up after to learn why they didn't bid on it. So we're doing our best to try to encourage more competition. In the last two solicitations we had in the miscellaneous CI and the miscellaneous design, we had one, I think it was 9 or 10 firms, and the other one we had 12. So we had healthy competition.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
Claudia, all of our contracts are awarded, have that procurement mandate or?
The SB and LB requirements?
Yes.
No, not all of them. So per policy, we have 10%. If we go below that, then there has to be a justification as to why, and sometimes it's because it's very specific in nature. For the most part, we try to always at least try to meet a 15% small business goal.
But how do we decide on this contract, we're going to bid it with those requirements?
Okay, so there's a process.
Versus a different one?
Right. So there's a process that we go through. We look at the entire list of qualified small business firms that are also in the area. So because we use the FDOT pre-qualifications, we look at the list and we see, all right, these are the firms that we know are fairly local, right? Because it wouldn't be feasible for a contract that's in the Panhandle to come bid down here. So we look at anything from Orlando basically down, and we see the firms that are able to bid the work and that are qualified. If you only have one firm that's SB, we don't want to do that, right? Because then you're basically monopolizing the procurement. So we take all that into account, and then there's a recommendation that's provided by our GEC consultants, and then we go through the process of determining whether we approve it or not.
Before bidding it out?
So in essence, in a nutshell, there's an evaluation every time we select a small business and LB percentage to put on each contract.
Because the target could be done in the scoring, right? Make it a recommendation, but not a requirement, and then give them additional scoring points in the evaluation process instead of a mandate, instead of a requirement?
We haven't historically done that. We've always made it as a contract requirement. DOT does a somewhat similar process. In their process, they do it through their contract performance. So they don't do it as a point of solicitation. They do it once the contract's awarded. If they meet the goal that's established for that contract, then they get additional points in their CPPR. Sorry. Mm-hmm. Okay. We can evaluate whether we want to change it, but it would require a policy change because it is a policy.
Okay, thank you.
If I may.
Yes.
I think this is not new with respect to specialized technical contracts, getting less than the desired amount of firms pursuing it. However, I would say for this type of contract, which is structures inspection, I did have a little bit of a concern when reviewing this as well, that we only got 2 firms submitting. There's a lot of things that can be done to try to garner more interest, including perhaps having industry forums before you actually put the solicitation out to make sure that firms understand what the scope of the contract is and what, GMX is looking for. Sometimes firms tend to think that because the incumbents are in the mix, they don't stand a chance. But if there's an invitation for a forum that gives them the technical information all in an equal kind of playing field event, they may put in for it. So I think part of what we need to think about is, do we want to do something like that and consider that as a step before we advertise a contract like this, given the history that we're seeing here today, where we're only getting a couple of firms submitting. So that's something DOT takes a look at when we get something like this happen, something to consider in the future.
When you say a policy change, is it a written policy
Yes.
in the procurement process, or?
Yeah, currently in the procurement policy, it states that we are to put 10% minimum small business participation in all of our contracts, unless approved otherwise, for the reasons I just explained. There is no actual requirement in our policies for local business. Again, this is something the agency has typically had a goal to meet. But if we wanted to change that minimum 10% or change the program altogether, that would be something that would be put forth in front of the board for approval.
Well, I like Board Member Peterman's suggestion about considering that when you do a scoring, but not making a requirement for bidding, because that way we're precluding other businesses from bidding, and it would be interesting to see if that would increase participation, because I really don't feel comfortable just keeping the same two. I mean, I'll support it now, but going forward, I would like to see more competition. I don't want to keep good companies away because, they don't meet one of these requirements that by policy we impose, but it's arbitrary in my opinion.
How long is this contract for?
This contract has an initial term of 4 years.
4 years, okay. All right, look, the small business and the local business policy, I think, is a honorable purpose.
Yeah.
And it's something we must definitely try to keep in our policy. And they've been working this contract now for 10 years.
That's right. They've had 2 rounds of it. So this would be the 3rd round of it.
So this will be the third round. So they'll be, end of this contract, we'll have done this 12 years. Is that right?
That's correct.
12 years.
Actually, more than that, because they've exercised one of the extensions, I believe.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Chair. Are the bid requirements restrictive for the smaller firms? Do you think that the bid requirements might be a little restrictive?
So we went through a pretty extensive effort about 1.5 years ago about, we met with industry and we kind of asked what were the pain points in our solicitation documents. And we've dwindled it down quite a bit. There's a potential for it to get even easier to bid. I don't think it really has to do anything with being a small business or a large business. In fact, I think to Board Member Page's point, it was a noble cause to try to promote small businesses. So really, the nexus of the beginning of this process was to get smaller firms a foot in the door to be able to start participating and work in limited access facilities. And then once they got to a certain threshold and they graduated from the small business program, then sometimes they were caught into this limbo stage where they were not big enough to be a prime, but they were not small enough to be an SB. And that's kind of where the local business program took off, where they still had a way to get into these contracts and when they fell in between that. So that was the whole idea of the program. We can definitely look at it and thresholds, and we can discuss whether we want to keep them as requirements or not. But the documents, I think, at this point are pretty streamlined. And moving forward, procurement is also looking at digitizing everything. So now, instead of having to submit everything hard copy, it'll be digitally submitted, similar to FDOT.
This is not a policy that GMX has looked at, has it?
This is a policy that the board adopted, but it
from our
came from
predecessor.
the previous agency.
Yeah, I would recommend that we do a review of that policy and brought back at a future meeting, including FDOT and the involvement in the process and make sure that we streamline it. There might be something that we may have missed, and I think the board should reaffirm our commitment to it, but I think it needs to make sure it doesn't sacrifice our technical abilities to provide service.
Understood. We can come back to the board and present a recommendation, and then basically what all the other agencies are doing for comparison purposes.
For comparison purposes, how many of these type of companies does FDOT work with to inspect bridges? Because for me, what I care about is that we have the best inspecting our bridges. Like everything else, it could be, great, but I want the best. So,
Right. So one of the reasons we do that is because DOT does a rigorous process of pre-qualifying firms for certain types of work. So every time that we put a solicitation out, it's tied to that specific type of work, and it's FDOT pre-qualified. So we won't let them come on our system or do any sort of work unless they are pre-qualified with FDOT. So we rely on FDOT's expertise to pre-qualify firms.
Yes.
Both of these firms are pre-qualified and
No, I hear
all
they're
capable
excellent.
to do the
Yes,
work.
yes, I hear they're excellent. But since they're the only two that bid, I wanted to know how many others are out there and whether they have like a ranking system that they maybe could be ranked higher. Like, I don't know if there's a ranking system for different contractors or companies.
Consultants get scored at DOT and they get grades based on their performance. So there's no real ranking, but there is a grading system once they finish the contract that speaks to their performance. But we have several pre-qualified firms across the state that are able to do bridge inspection.
Thank you.
What do we do with that grading system? Because we have a grading system too, right? Yeah, I know you said that these both ranked as excellent.
Yeah, we just call
So
it.
do we use that in the evaluation process later when we, in procurement, or we just, that's for
No.
retention?
For sure. We do it as reference when we're doing a solicitation and we're evaluating a consultant. We look at their past performance, obviously. Yes. That comes into play.
Okay.
And
But
if they score, by the way, below a certain threshold, off memory, I think it's 70. If they score below a certain threshold, then they're prohibited from bidding in future work for a certain amount of time.
Okay.
So it's in their best interest to do a good job.
So for the record, the discussion, it's not in any way about these two companies. It's more of an enlightenment for the board to discuss how the policy works and how we choose different companies in the event that we have like a low number of companies bidding. So this just helps us going forward.
Yeah, I don't remember at the top of my head how many actual firms are qualified to do this work that are local, but we will definitely come back with that analysis for the board, the next board meeting.
Okay. Is there a motion to approve?
Move.
I'll second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Any nays? Motion passes. So now we go to item E. Interim Executive Director Garcia.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This item is board review of the agency's new artificial intelligence policy. At the September 27th, 2023 meeting of the governing board, action was taken to approve all GMX policies in substantial form. Direction was given for review by the board of all agency policies and for staff to make recommendations for the board's consideration. Mr. Diaferia will address this artificial intelligence policy in further detail for the board.
Yeah, so this policy is actually a new policy for the agency. So this is not a carryover from the previous agency. This policy had been circulated previously to the board and some comments had been made. Those comments were hopefully addressed. And so now we're presenting for approval of the artificial intelligence policy. It's a very, I don't want to,
Vanilla?
I want to say vanilla, yeah, vanilla policy, and it's purposely done so. It's technology agnostic, so it's supposed to be a generic outward-facing policy. We're still in the infancy stages of implementing AI into our systems. This policy obviously ensures that it's equitable and there's no bias in the system, and that it's not meant to replace humans but only enhance our efficiency. So again, we're not tailoring it to a specific technology. We're doing it generic, and as things come along, we will be updating this policy accordingly.
I understand that Board Member Blanco was very helpful in the recommendations of this policy.
Yes, and it's, I mean, it's a good policy to start with. I mean, it's a generic like umbrella to give us space to work on different things, not just for projects, but internally, staff-wise and whatnot. So it's good to show that we're keeping ahead of the game there when it comes to including things like this regarding technology before we get deeper into using that technology. So.
Board Member Pages.
Yeah, there's a statement you made, and I want to make sure we're clear. I believe I'll only come and address what I would think. The AI policy, my concern was one of privacy, one of the general public's privacy. You made a comment on AI not to replace people.
Yes.
Now, is that an actual policy?
It's actually written
into
partially in the.
It
yeah.
is. It is.
Yes, it is.
It is. Now, isn't that doesn't that kind of come in conflict with the efficiency
No,
component?
I think the point is there's a lot of manual tasks that we do right now that can be automated, but ultimately the final review is still there's still a human behind the process, right?
Right, but those other functions could be replaced by AI.
Yeah, in that sense, yes. But I think the point is that the human still has the ultimate say in a decision point.
Okay,
Right?
but the policy is not excluding our ability to.
That's correct.
Okay, is that clear?
Yes, that's clear.
Okay,
I understand what you mean.
Yeah, the policy says that there will be steps taken to protect private data from unwanted access, use, and disclosure. So even like ChatGPT, for example, if you submit questions to it, they get that information and they keep that information. So I think we just have to be conscious of artificial intelligence. You know, some programs are free, but there's nothing free. And they basically are using our data. So we just have to be careful and conscious with that.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I totally agree with that. And as a matter of fact, at FDOT, a similar evolution of the policy is taking place where there was an initial general policy that was established to create some guardrails and parameters for its use. But now we're trying to actually figure out what is the right platform to use for the agency. And I think similar to what DOT is looking at, GMX should take that next logical step in the evolution of this. To your point about ChatGPT, those are platforms where, you put a statement into the language model, and if you're using the free platform, it goes into the ethos, and anyone can get that information. And if someone is not careful about what you're putting out there, it will become public information. And so I think we need to think about how we want to take that next step and try to secure its use so that we protect the interests of the agency. So I think that should be the next evolution in this.
Thank you. Yeah, so I think we should already start thinking of the next step.
Agreed.
But yeah, but for now, I think this is, we're moving in the right direction.
It's a good start.
Yes.
The other question I have is on oversight. As far as we have a policy, right?
Yes.
When new systems are introduced or new systems are brought to us, I think there needs to be a very clear AI policy adherence
Sure.
or an attesting to the fact that whatever we're doing and that aspect has been done, because this board won't be around forever.
That's right.
But future boards may not even they would assume that it is, and it may not, and we may find it later as a scandal, as a problem later.
Yeah, I do want to point out, so we also work with Board Member Blanco. We have outward-facing policies, such as this, and
Yeah.
then specifically for IT,
Yes.
we have internal-facing policies, which obviously address security concerns, which we wouldn't want to broadcast. And we've worked together with Board Member Blanco, so I can make that available as well if interested.
Yeah. So in other words, I mean, I don't want this, or we don't want this just to be a paper,
Understood.
on the file. Oh yeah, we have an AI policy. We have to live the policy. We have to live the policy, and we got to make sure that everything we do, every new system, every new everything, we wrap this around, because this over the next 5 or 10 years will be a major issue,
Yeah,
if
I think-
it's not already.
Of all the policies, I think this is the one that's going to be a living, breathing document. It's
Okay.
going to be updated.
That's what I wanted to hear. Thank
frequently.
you.
And I think it's something that we should pass on to our subcontractors, contractors, and contracts, because at the end of the day, they have our data. And that information that they're using, whether it's the design or cost,
Yes,
it's other information that we may not want to put out there.
correct. Agreed.
I have a question. Are we, where are we anticipating using this AI? Like, is it to operate, like,
So
just in
honestly,
general?
it's expanding like wildfire.
Yeah.
So AI
Could
is
be
going
anything.
everywhere. Right now, where we have it is in tolling, for example. There's things that are very manual, and you can use AI. There's simple things like identifying a vehicle that's disabled on the side of the road, because right now we still rely on our operators at the TMC to identify them, or someone calling it in. So we can use AI to potentially identify either trash or a vehicle and then alert the operator, say, hey, I think there's something here, look at it, and then dispatch the appropriate response. So things like that. We're looking at things internally to do, for example, asset maintenance, which is predictive modeling, right? We give it all the data of our condition of our roadway, and then it'll say, hey, the system will tell you predictively, we think that in 2028, this area might have an issue. So it's right now, this is where we are in our AI, but again, we think it's going to expand quite significantly. It's what Secretary Iglesias just mentioned. It's really establishing as an agency, where is it that we want to go and what are the right platforms for our use.
So is there a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Opposed, say nay. Motion passes. The next item on our regular agenda is item F. Mr. Garcia, please introduce the item.
Yes, Madam Chair. This item is the adoption of Resolution 25-08, approving a plan of transfer agreement with the Bank of New York Mellon Trust Company, formerly known as the Bank of New York, as trustee, and authorizing the execution and delivery of the agreement. This plan of transfer agreement formalizes the transition of all financial obligations under the existing amended and restated trust indenture dated as of June 15th, 2002. This ensures that GMX will assume full responsibility under the trust indenture, including the collection of revenues and repayment of bond debt. And our Chief Financial Officer, Sandra Bridgman, will address this item in further detail.
So this is the thing. I'm so excited about this. I know for a lot of people it's just paper, but this is really the official transition from MDX to GMX, allowing us to move forward. For several years, we couldn't do anything with our bonds. We lost opportunities that we could have gotten. And this, by you approving this, it makes us go forward. And it recognizes GMX officially as the only entity that can do this job. So I'm excited about it. We've worked very diligently with our bond counsel, with the trustee counsels, with our own attorneys, and they've done a fantastic job in putting together this agreement. It went back and forth. The trustees board already saw it, and we're at the very last crumbles of it. This is allowing us to pay the legal fees related to all this transaction, and it's giving the interim director the ability to finalize the terms, and we want to do it ASAP. And we're excited. I am excited, and this is a new world, and no one can contain my happiness on this one.
Yes, Board Member Pages.
This is, I agree. This is a big deal. We've been in a holding pattern from the very beginning for 6 years.
6 years.
That's exactly right. And we did lose a lot of opportunities. Some we may have wanted to lose. But this is, at the end of the day, GMX is a technical operating, make sure the highways are running and they work, and then it's a financing organization to be able to do our projects. We've been on hold on half of that. So this is day one for the new GMX to be able to really do. There's a lot of other work going on concurrent in the finance department to find the right people to help us now do the work that we need to do and restructure and rebuild. So there's a lot of very interesting and very exciting things coming down the road for GMX and our abilities to finance our projects. So I commend everyone involved in this process, and I'm glad we finally arrived at the end of this road. And so thank you.
Well, there's a little detail that I really would like more information on, which is what is the amount of fees that we have to pay the trustees for outstanding costs and expenses, item 9 on the resolution.
So actually, there is an agreement now, since we asked for that. That's the bank portion of it. The $5,000 is the bank portion of all the transactions that they need to do, because it's not just signing the paper. I have an agreement now that tells me what they're doing as opposed to a blank $5,000 check. We questioned it, and our bond counsel reached out to the trustees council, and they did provide that line item for us with an agreement.
So it's only $5,000?
It's only $5,000.
Because this is blank on the
Oh,
A7.
Oh, because when you put that together.
oh, when we put, okay, when this agreement was put together, when this paper was put together, I had not had the agreement yet, and it came Friday night.
Yeah, I think it's wonderful. Yeah. Is there a motion to approve?
Motion.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, say nay. Hearing none, motion passes. So at this time, we will proceed with the election of officers for the Greater Miami Expressway Agency for the term beginning July 1, 2025 through June 30th, 2026, in accordance with Section 3.2 of the GMX bylaws. I now call upon our General Counsel to preside over the officer elections.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Pursuant to Article 3, Section 3.2 of the GMX bylaws, the board will now elect officers to the following positions: Chair, Vice Chair, Treasurer, and Secretary. Each position will be elected individually, beginning with the Chair. All board members may nominate themselves or another board member as Chair or Vice Chair. However, a nominee need not be a board member to be eligible for the positions of Secretary or Treasurer. Each nomination must receive a second to be considered, and prior to voting, members may speak in support of their own or another nominee's candidacy. No member may be elected to an office for more than 2 consecutive terms, except for Secretary that has no term limit. So we will now proceed with the election of each office in order, starting with Chair. So beginning with Chair, are there any nominations for the position of Chair?
I would like to nominate Vice Chair Perez for the position of Chair.
Second.
There is a nomination of Vice Chair Perez and a second. Are there any other nominations? Okay, with the nominations closed, before we vote, which there's only one nominee, would anyone like to speak or make any comment? Okay, with that, seeing the nominations are closed, there's no discussion. We will elect the chair by majority vote. All in favor? Aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? By majority vote, Vice Chair Perez is elected chair of the Greater Miami Expressway Agency.
Congratulations.
Congratulations. We'll move on to election of the vice chair. Are there any nominations for the position of vice chair?
I like to nominate Treasurer Pages as Vice Chair.
Is there a second?
Second.
There's a nomination of member Pages with a second. Are there any other nominations? Is there a motion to close the nominations?
Close.
Second. Seeing the nominations are closed, any speeches or discussion? Seeing none, we'll move to vote. All in favor of the election of member Pages as vice chair, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none, by majority vote, we have the election of Vice Chair Pages for the Greater Miami Expressway Agency. Next, we'll move to the election of Treasurer. Are there any nominations for the position of Treasurer?
I'd like to nominate Chair Cancio.
Second.
Second. Yeah.
We have a nomination of now member Cancio and a second. Is there a motion to close the nominations?
Motion to close.
Second.
Motion to close in a second. And all in favor to close the nominations, say aye.
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 Okay, any discussion before we vote? No discussion. All in favor of Member Cancio becoming treasurer, please say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing none opposed by majority, unanimous vote. We have the election of our new treasurer is Marilee Cancio. Next and finally, the election of the secretary. Are there any nominations for secretary?
I nominate Richard Blanco.
Is there a second?
Second.
I have a discussion. Is Maria Luisa our current secretary? You are?
She's the board secretary, but we also have Richard Blanco on the board as a secretary in accordance with the Chapter 348.
So we'll still have Maria Luisa and...
Absolutely.
Cannot replace Maria Luisa.
That I removed my second. Mary Elise is irreplaceable. Did we have a secretary before?
I don't remember. Did we have a secretary before?
Yes,
Yeah.
me.
Oh, you...
Your stealth secretary. Yeah,
No, but then he cannot be secretary.
he can. Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, except secretary. Oh,
Doesn't have a limit, yeah.
Okay.
No limit.
Perfect.
Okay, is there a motion to close the nominations of the secretary?
Move to close.
Second? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, any discussion before we vote on secretary? With none, all in favor of the election of Member Blanco for another term as the secretary, say aye.
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 Any opposed?
No.
And by majority and unanimous vote, Member Blanco is elected again as Secretary of the Greater Miami Expressway Agency. This concludes the elections.
Congratulations.
Thank you, General Counsel.
Congrats to all.
So now, we move on to the next item, which is the Interim Executive Director's Report. Mr. Garcia, you are recognized to provide an update to the board.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. While I am pleased to report that the Greater Miami Expressway Agency continues to operate smoothly and effectively, and that our team remains fully engaged in delivering safe, reliable, and efficient expressway services to the general public, there are no operational concerns at this time, and all core functions are being carried out without disruption. As far as updates, we have an update on the project across the street, Miami Freedom Park. We've continued to engage with the developer, with the city of Miami, with the county and FDOT. One of the issues that we discussed during our last board meeting in April was the traffic analysis. And really hot off the presses as of Friday, I received an update that, in large part, thank you to FDOT through the efforts helping to coordinate this traffic analysis and its model. A traffic model has now been developed, and it's currently undergoing calibration and validation. It was submitted on June 6th to GMX, to FDOT, and to Miami-Dade County for review. Once validated, the next steps will include traffic forecasting, operational analysis, and identifying potential improvements in the model. GMX, in collaboration with FDOT and Miami-Dade County, is actively reviewing and refining the traffic management plan. It will serve as a framework for managing both event day and day-to-day operations, and we will continue to coordinate and monitor the traffic analysis. The other issue that we were looking at was the issue of the parking garage that was also going to be built next to the stadium. We continue to coordinate closely with FDOT and the county to ensure alignment on all critical project components. Ongoing efforts include traffic model development and validation, roadway design reviews, traffic management plan development in relation to the parking garage, signage planning, and GMX is also monitoring the status of the parking garage building permit, with pending confirmation of approval from Miami-Dade County. And I don't know, Claudia, if you have anything to add to that?
Well, first off, I want to commend FDOT because I really do think that they took a lead step in really guiding this process. And we've made quite a bit of progress in the last month and a half. I think the discussion in the past was getting a model that we could all stand behind, and then afterwards let the engineering speak for itself. And unfortunately, until this point, we really weren't there yet. But I'm happy to say that I think now with this approval and this calibration of this model, we can actually look at the pain points where the actual issues are, and then discuss real engineering solutions as to what can be done. So we're now at that step. And again, I want to commend DOT for taking the lead on this process.
Could we have a copy of that proposed plan that you received Friday?
Sure.
Absolutely, yes.
And is there any discussion as to the pedestrian walkway?
Not yet. They've been taking survey. We've allowed them to come onto our property to do survey. Again, I think one of the things that we said as fatal flaws is that they could not put a column within our actual right-of-way and affect any of our parking. So the only thing that we would potentially entertain, and obviously would be presented to the board, would be for them to span over our parking lot. So it would be just an aerial easement, because the alignment would go straight through the western side of our parking lot, just adjacent to the Sheraton garage. So one of the foundations would be where the sidewalk is right now on 21st, and the other one would be basically on the bank of the canal here, and the pedestrian walkway would potentially span over it. That's the only thing we would entertain. We still have not received the proposal. They're still finishing their survey to then present that option. My understanding is they're also looking at the other alternatives, which is going through the Sheraton garage and potentially doing something on 21st Street and 37th.
Because there's major power lines here, so I don't know how that would even work.
We brought that up as one of the concerns, because regardless whether they go across here, Sheraton, or 21st, they're going to have to deal with two types of power lines. One is the transmission lines, which are 135 kilovolts, and the other ones are distribution lines, which will typically require months and months and months of coordination with FDOT. Those are some of the main power lines that feed the Miami International Airport. So that process usually takes at least 10 to 12 months just for coordination, because they're going to have to reroute power in order to get in.
And their anticipated opening is March of 2026. So, I mean, we won't be there, they won't be there by then.
So to Claudio's point, FDOT really decided to take a lead role in the coordination effort when it came to the traffic. I think we wanted to make sure that, based on their own aggressive time frame, that they took as little missteps as possible in developing the traffic model, so that at least we can look at something to then talk about what mitigation strategies there could be when it comes to traffic. I think we're making progress with them. I get updated on a weekly basis when it comes to my team and their engagement with their traffic engineers. So from that standpoint, I feel confident that we're going to get a model that I think we can really collectively look at and say, okay, here's where the traffic congestion is going to be created. How do we mitigate for that? I think the reality of what's being looked at right now is that there's going to need to be an interim access and traffic solution, and then an ultimate or final build-out traffic solution, because of the sheer aggressive time frame that they're looking at when it comes to this. And based on what we've heard from the developer, they have a phased build-out approach. So they intend to first and foremost build the stadium, that parking garage, some minor retail that will serve the patrons coming into those two facilities. That's going to require an access plan and a mitigation approach that's different, or can be built upon for the final build-out. So that's the strategic approach that's being taken, just to be able to talk about some measured approach to getting some solutions out there. But the pedestrian bridge, to the point that's being made about all the infrastructure that needs to be relocated and coordinated with, that likely can't be part of that interim solution, just because of the sheer nature and time that they're going to have to be able to get all that coordinated and the bridge built.
And when you talk about the permanent plan, my biggest concern for GMX is the exit of the 836 westbound exit on 37th Avenue. It's one lane. It's one lane that merges with like 3 lanes coming in and goes into one lane. And I think that's the way that you go to the airport from 836 West. I mean, for me, that point, that little piece, it's going to be a nightmare, a nightmare. So I've heard in the past that we would have to incur the expenses of any work on that area. And that is something that I don't have in our budget, or we haven't talked about any such expenses. And that is my biggest concern. And it will be a nightmare for us.
We haven't gotten to that point yet. We have not discussed cost or sharing. So first, we're going to identify now what would be required to mitigate the increase in traffic. At that point, once we identify what's the best solution, then the discussions about responsibility will come. But they do have a statutory responsibility to mitigate their impacts. They don't have a responsibility to mitigate a current deficiency, right? So if something is failing now and it's on our system, it's not their responsibility. They're responsible for the delta that they're creating.
But from what I heard in the past, and please correct me if I'm wrong, is that we already have a deficiency.
That's correct.
In that area. Therefore, we can't go tell them that we need it fixed because we already have a deficiency, but the reality is that we live with our deficiency, and if we need to do something because of the stadium, it's going to be because of the stadium, not because of our current deficiency. And I don't know how you separate the two.
When you say them, is City of Miami in the room?
I think City of Miami's been coordinated with when they have these weekly meetings. So I'm not participating in those meetings. I've specifically not wanted to make sure that it's a technical staff-related discussion. But City of Miami, from what I understand, is in the meetings along with the county, GMX, and our staff.
And Madam Chair, if I may, on May 5th, Claudio and I did attend a meeting with the City of Miami. I was coordinated by the city, but the developer was there, the county was there, different engineers, and it was the first time that we were formally invited to participate. So it was a bit of an eye-opener for us, but we discussed all these items. And ever since that May 5th meeting, things have been going much smoother in our dialogue with the city, the county, and the developer.
All right. Just want to be specific. The data input that's coming in includes all of the City of Miami projects, or it does not include any of the City of Miami projects? Because one thing is that they're cooperative and coming along, but we know there's a number of other things. So if you can address that.
Yeah, to be fair, with MFP, they're even though they now have operational control of the whole area, their final build out is not the entire area. They're basically, their lease is, there's going to be a road roughly in the middle of this whole parcel, and they're going to be in charge of all the area that has the garages, the retail, the hotels, the parking garages, etc. But on the eastern side of it, it's basically going to be a public park, and it's going to potentially house the City of Miami building. The traffic that is being submitted to FDOT and us in the county does not include that volume. So that's something that we've been continually making a comment about. But the City of Miami will have to come to the table with their traffic study to bring it all together for the final build out. But right now, we have not seen those numbers.
So the interim strategy, as you only addresses the stadium, the retail, and the parking garage.
The stadium is
right?
scheduled to open for just practices for the World Cup in 2026.
Right.
So it'll be just for addressing folks coming into the stadium to see practice matches. That's why the garage and the stadium are basically phase one.
And what leverage points do we have post the second phase of it? I mean, how the City of Miami decides to build the skyscrapers there, or whatever. Whatever they decide to build there. What leverage points do we have to be able to? Because we can hold back on certain things, and I know we were working on a number of things to bring them to the table. But what do we have?
So most of the traffic that's going to come to the City of Miami is going to be generated here on 37th Avenue, which belongs to Miami-Dade County. The traffic that would affect us directly as GMX would be more so the ramp and the CD road on Lejeune, which is not the ramp that people would be taking to access the City of Miami building. So that is something that we're going to have to incorporate into the ultimate, and Miami-Dade County is going to have to, come to terms with whatever traffic study is generated by that.
All right. Final question. What's the timeline on all this?
So I believe phase one, the build out is next year, May 26 or March 26, 2026. And then it'll be in phases. I think they're all the way up to 30, I'm sorry, for phase two. And then post that, I don't think it's a firm time frame as to what phase three is.
Right. I meant our timeline. Our timeline, FDOT, GMX, county, our timeline over the next, when do we go back with them with comments? When do we tell them we need this or that or whatever it is?
So DOT's given them a very prescriptive schedule to be able to hit certain milestones on the traffic. So they have fallen a bit behind schedule on that timeline right now. They're about a week and a half behind schedule. Nothing that's not insurmountable. I think a week and a half can be absorbed. We created that schedule based on their own March 2026 target opening date. In parallel, there's an ongoing effort between the agencies to review the design of that interim solution to be able to get that advanced as much as possible. So there's already an iterative review process that's going on from that perspective. Once the model comes out with the traffic impacts, that design may or may not need to be modified. But they understand the risks associated with that. They asked us to take that approach so that we don't do this in linear fashion and then ultimately find themselves behind the eight ball when it comes to the design. That's as far as we've gotten. After that, we really haven't talked about what are the timeframes, what are the costs, what are the solutions, because it's all dependent on that traffic model. So until we get that traffic model and we agree on what's in there and we start realizing what needs to be done to address traffic in the interim solution, and ultimately when it's all built out, we can't establish any timeframes for any of that.
Are any of the construction or any of the subject to non-City of Miami approval?
Miami-Dade County building
For
approval
what?
for their garage, for example,
The garage, okay.
and then many of the other facilities as well.
Okay.
Well, actually, all the other facilities.
So developer and the city, let's say they're one and the same, require third-party approvals on a number of components of that project, is that right?
Yeah, because they have to go through building code. They won't get CO until they have their permits.
Very good, thank you.
So they're not going to open without the parking garage, correct?
My understanding is that they need the parking garage to open the first phase.
So 37th Avenue is county?
14th is FDOT, and then the CD road, which is Lejeune, is GMX's.
So that portion that would go into their parking garage, that is GMX?
It's a combination because 14th kind of leads into where the garage would go.
Right.
So that's why the coordination is so critical.
Right, so 14th is on the southern side of the property. So that's the property, that's the roadway that would receive the westbound 836 traffic that would want to get off to get onto the CD system on Lejeune and ultimately into the property on the northwest quadrant. So it's all kind of tied together when it comes to accessing the property.
Yeah, 14 ties into the ramp at the CD road on Lejeune.
I'm just thinking out loud here, since Sunshine, we can't really have these discussions privately, but any chance of maybe putting another toll point right there just for the stadium access to offset costs of, clearly we're going to have
We typically don't toll any non-limited access areas, but not something we can't review if the board wishes.
I do have a question. Are we operating on any sort of assumptions based on what we know is probably or may happen in order to prepare ourselves as an agency for what's coming in terms of changes that we may need to make or adjustments or whatever? In other words, not waiting for all of these studies to be completed 100% before we put a plan together to.
Yeah, I don't know if there are assumptions. I think
This is for my novice.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, as we've mentioned, I think right now we're at a point where now we can actually start analyzing where the actual critical areas are going to be and then the potential solutions. For us at GMX, we have some right-of-way that's available on the east side of the CD Road on Lejeune. So there's a space there for a potential ramp. Now what we're going to basically be looking at is the weaving distances, because obviously you have folks from 14th Street trying to get to the airport, going to weave to the left, while folks coming from Lejeune proper or the ramp are going to start weaving right. And the distance is quite short because it's under 1,000 feet. So without getting super technical, those are really short weaving distances. But we know we have some space in that area, and we could potentially divide that lane out. That way you're not blocking folks from trying to get to the airport. That's one of the largest concerns. So there are some things that we kind of have an idea of where the potential solution is going to be. Unfortunately, there's quite of a big pinch point at 14th Street because of that flyover bridge. It's a steel bridge, and the envelope there is quite limited. There's 2 lanes going westbound and only 1 coming eastbound, and there really isn't that much room there other than us reducing the sidewalk. So there's like kind of ideas already that we've all been looking at and hypothesizing what a potential solution is going to be. But in terms of mainline proper, there's nothing we need to do at this point in time. If with the proper management of police officers during event times, I think during the events we can manage. I think it's really once the full build out comes out and then you have this place fully operational during the day, that's where I think we need to address. Because events always can be handled with flushing intersections and helping that out. But putting a traffic management plan internally also of making sure, for example, when folks come into the MFP, they're not sitting there pushing a button, getting a ticket, right? So those are things that operationally are really good. Where the design that we've seen, the concept is that they have kind of a system where the vehicles go in and then they pay afterwards. So you're not stopping them coming in. So these are all things that are in the discussion.
So just to piggyback, from a time perspective, there'll be practices next year and then games 27.
I believe that's their schedule.
That's the FIFA schedule, I imagine.
I think they're targeting MLS games next
not
year.
FIFA.
Yeah.
They're selling tickets.
Yep. All over the access points are graded. We grade them, right? We have grades on them.
I'm sorry?
All the access points that we're concerned about are all of our access points. We have grades on the flow of the traffic at those points, or do we not do that?
You mean level of service? I think
Level
that's
of
what you're
service. I'm
referring-
sorry, level of
Yes,
service.
yes. That's how we evaluate our traffic conditions.
So the developer's responsibility will be to make it no worse than whatever that level of service is. Is that right?
Correct.
Is that how we operate? Because I know from other functions, I know that's how
Right.
it's done. It's same here.
Yeah, the analysis will give you, even if we're at an F, which is the worst,
Right.
it'll still tell you how much worse we made the F.
Right. Okay. Are we at an F anywhere?
Yes.
We are. Okay. Great. All right. Thank you.
I'll just add a little bit of information about the traffic management plan. So that's one of the things DOT asked them to put together and make sure that their consultant understands we're looking for a robust traffic management plan. That traffic management plan is an important component to how we manage traffic into and out of the site, including within the site. They have a huge site and they have huge access roads within that site that can be converted, can be manipulated, can be controlled to stack, to queue, to flush, depending on the level of traffic. And they can control that artificially. And so we need to see what that plan is, because that's a huge component along with the traffic in how to mitigate for the impacts. So they are working on that. They have a consultant that we believe is very good at putting something like that together. We just have to see what comes out of that process.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, is it instructive or even useful to look at where there are other stadiums that are being built around the country to see what issues that they're going through pre and post?
Yes. I believe that is part of the analysis and the robustness of their traffic analysis. In terms of the roadways, there's obviously uniqueness into where we are, given the fact that we're right next to the airport. But in terms of their operations plans internally, there's definitely lessons to be learned from other stadiums. Absolutely.
Mr. Garcia.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Another update I want to provide is the recurring issue of the monies owed by the county to GMX. So, and tied into the sale of parcels to the Miami-Dade Aviation Department. So, we did receive an update late last week from Miami-Dade County that the $8.2 million item is currently on the Miami-Dade County agenda for June 26. So that's one of those monies that's owed to the to GMX by the county. The second, the $5 million item is still not on there, but we should be getting an update soon on whether or not that made it to the agenda. I'm looking at Claudio.
It hasn't made into the agenda yet. I think they're finalizing an internal process with a traffic analysis in order for them to release the money. The money is there. I've got confirmation that the $5 million is in the account, but to release it from the impacts fees for us, there was a study that they had to complete, and they're in the process of finalizing that.
And what about the 3.7 from Miami-Dade County
The
Water? and
3.1, we've requested a meeting with the head of Miami-Dade Water and Sewer to discuss that charge specifically, because that's a completely different side of the house for the county.
Yeah, but I would like to get paid everything from the county before
Understood.
moving forward.
Right. So we've submitted that through ISD. That process hasn't really been fruitful for us, so we're taking a different route at this point. We've compiled a complete different file now that we're sending over to discuss it directly with the head.
Thank you.
So much to the chagrin of our current treasurer and sure incoming treasurer as well.
So our tab is 16 million to date, is that what it is?
So it's 8.2 for the Dolphin Park and Ride. It's 5 million for the bridge punch through, and it's 3 million,
Okay.
3.1 million for the Miami-Dade Water and Sewer League.
Okay, very good.
And how much is it again that they're paying for the parcels by the airport?
Off memory, it's 16.1 million. And by the way, the contract there's 3 parcels: parcels 169A and B, parcel 193, and parcel 216. Those 3 contracts that we've drafted up have the provision that we will not execute that contract until the money's owed for the 8.2 million and the 5 are paid.
But I would like to add the 3.
It's going to be a challenge. We had already, from previous board meetings, we had committed to those 2 items, and that's how we put it in the contract, because they're a completely different side of the house, and that process might take some time, because we're exploring even the option of expanding the JPA that the county currently has with FDOT to include that in. It'll take some time for them. If we can come back to the board on that recommendation, because per previous direction, we only included the 8.2 and the 5 into the sale of those 3 parcels. I think the 3 is going to take some time, to be honest with you.
Do we have a line in the sand with that provision with the county? I mean, in other words, if the settlement of the 8 point whatever is not done by a certain date, we move on to seek other buyers?
Yes. So the contract, that's why it was tied for the 8.2 and the 5. We didn't include the 3 because the 3 has a lot of moving components into it. The other ones are more straightforward. So if we don't get it executed, I want to say, because they're taking time to do the appraisals, Richard?
They're completing them now.
Yeah, there's still some time. So I would say by the end of this calendar year, if we have not resolved this, then we're just going to go to the second bidder.
But there is a date specific in the contract? Or how's it?
No, it's tied to the payment of those 2 items. I don't think we actually set a date.
No, they still have to get it on the agenda.
Yeah, because they still haven't scheduled it into the agenda, the 5 million.
I know, but if it takes them 10 years,
We haven't put that line.
so
in the
then at
sand
what
in
point do we pull the plug and say we're moving on to bidder number 2?
We still haven't put that on paper. We've discussed it internally. Again, I think by the end of this calendar year, if nothing has been finalized and we haven't been paid our monies, then we'll go to the next bidder. But we haven't put in contract.
Okay.
Just for reference, we've been talking about this now with the county for, what do you estimate, a year?
I would say
A little
2.
over a year?
I would say almost
It's costing
2.
us $500,000 a year in interest.
In interest. That's correct.
So if it's going on 2 years, we're looking at $1 million
That is correct.
We can add in there that they can pay the interest.
Yeah, so it's, I think we may not be able to do that, but I bring that up because any future involvement of the county, or anybody else for that matter, we need to be very firmed up on our terms as far as, I don't know if it's allowed, I don't know if it's customary, I don't know.
It is
But from a
customary.
business perspective, it's costing us well over $500,000 a year.
I agree with that 100%. It's not customary, the situation we're in. Typically, we would execute a JPA or some sort of interlocal agreement between the agencies before we move forward with work. In the case of the park and ride, there is a commitment in writing. In the part of the $5 million that was never finalized, and that's why we're in the situation we're in.
When you say it's on the county agenda, is it sponsored by a specific commissioner, or it's just through the county manager's office?
I'm not sure what the answer is. Do you, I mean, and I know it's on the county agenda is what we, the email that I received.
It's typically sponsored by a commissioner.
But yeah, I'm not sure who's got it. We can follow up.
I just don't remember the exact language that we used when we approved the sale of the parcels to the county, but I thought that I made it clear that I wanted to, as a condition for approval, was the payment from the county of the monies that were owed. And I don't remember excluding the Miami-Dade water and sewer bill. Was that excluded, or did we just mention the other two? I don't recall that language.
Yeah, I'm trying to think back to the meeting, and I think we just used the general terms of monies owed to GMX. So I would have assumed that it included everything.
The discussion was the 13 million. That's why it comprised of the 8.2 and the 5. And then the 3 was going to be, it's part of the project of the 36. So we still have the remainder of the project to finalize that agreement and collect. In my opinion, I think it's, the 8.2 is already in the agenda. The 5 is really close. I'm not sure the 3 is going to be within the end of this calendar year. So we're going to have to be faced with a situation where we may cut that off, and I really don't think that the airport can push that issue enough to get Miami Water and Sewer to finalize that, just because of the mechanism of what they would have to do. So let's say we agreed. They would have to agree to all the charges, then schedule it into committee, schedule it into the BCC.
But is the agreement finalized, a purchase agreement for the land?
No.
Is it signed?
No.
It's not signed.
No.
We've closed on all the other sales.
Everything is
Everything's been
no, we have not closed on the other side.
We've not closed on any of the sales?
2 of them have been closed, parcel 112 and 115. They're for Raphael's signature?
Right.
They're on Raphael's desk for signature. I'm not sure if you've signed them yet.
All right, but it's a subject, it's an internal issue. It's not,
Yes.
it's a,
That's correct.
all right, so it's on the agenda for June 26th.
June 26.
We've been on the agenda or potentially on the agenda several times.
It was, no, never officially.
Never
It was
officially,
always
but
drafted
told
and
we
then-
might be on it.
That's correct.
Our next meeting is in August.
August
And then it'll be in
August 14th.
14.
So if they miss that date, we're looking at,
The county is off in August, so
Alright, so-
typically they come back in September.
what do we do? I guess it's for the general counsel's question. What do we do if it's taken off the agenda? And just, the can gets kicked down the road another 4 months, 5 months? What recourse do we have? I know where I'm getting to, but I just want to make sure I understand. Do we just come back and talk about it again in August?
I think that may be the only thing you can do at that point.
Oh, but I think we
Raphael, do
need
you
to
have-
incorporate the terms on the contract. Try to have a contract that incorporates like deadlines and interest or some sort of,
Right.
price increase. If we don't close with such a date, well, then you're going to pay this.
Well,
Can we do
I
that?
guess what I'm saying is, on morning of June 27th, they took it off the agenda. Do we just, agents just gonna sit there and wait for us to come back and talk about it? Or do we give instructions to initiate litigation at that time?
You can authorize that.
Okay.
Yes.
So I move that if on If it's not resolved by the end of the day, June 26th, that on June 27th, we initiate litigation for the county for that amount, for whatever amount that is. I don't know what's on the agenda that day.
I'll second, and I'd like to amend it.
Okay, I accept the amendment. I mean, accept whatever you're, I accept the fact that you're doing an amendment.
I'd also like to add the sale of those properties to establish a deadline at that time, and the deadline be soon thereafter, by the end of the calendar year, by December 31st of this calendar year, something to that effect, in addition to proceeding with litigation.
All right, so you're proposing that on June 27th, if it's not resolved, we proceed with the litigation, or we initiate litigation?
Yeah, for all 16 million.
Right, for all 16, well, we can't, let's be clear on that. Because you are separating the 3 million, and I understand that the former chairperson.
I'm still chair at the end of the month.
Okay. At the July 1st, okay, beautiful. Then the chair's position, I'm not sure we want to murk that up with the $3 million. I mean, let's just say it is if it's okay or not, I don't know.
No, I don't think it is. I think the 3 million is more complicated than that. The county has to acknowledge the 3 million. I think the problem with the 3 million is that when that pipe was discovered, it was a certain understanding of what those costs were going to be. And as time progressed and it required us to do redesign and basically rephasing of that whole ramp K, it really kind of escalated in cost. And so the county's position at this point is that they don't feel that they're responsible for the full 3 million.
So there's disagreement about
There's disagreement about the 3 million. So I really highly doubt that you'll have this by August.
Well, from what I hear, you have doubts that we're going to have the 3 million in its totality at all. Like maybe they'll pay part, maybe they won't pay any.
Right. So the 8.2 and the 5 are kind of very clear, clean,
Right.
clean cut. It was work that was performed on behalf of the county. We have agreements. We understand what the scope of work is very defined, and there's no questions as to the responsibility. In fact, the county has acknowledged responsibility for both of those items. So I'm not so worried about those 2 items. The 3, we're still going through the process of negotiating who's responsible for what. Our position is that they're responsible for the 3 million. They're obviously saying no. So that's why I think those are a little bit more difficult.
I personally do not like litigation. I think it's expensive, time-consuming. It just sometimes doesn't advance the cause. I mean, the idea is correct. Like, we need to get paid. But they really want those parcels. Or we're going to find out if they really want those parcels.
Right, but I
So,
agree.
we told them, we'll sell it to you if you pay us. But if we sue them to pay us, did they pay us? They're going to end up paying us, and we're going to spend more money in litigation. So I'm not sure. I think the parcels, it's more of big carrot for them. It's like, do you want these parcels? We're going to put them for bid again, and maybe for a lot more money. And we're just losing too much money, and we can't continue waiting. And that has to be conveyed to them. And we have friends in the county that understand numbers and the need that the airport has for those parcels. Because if we sell it to somebody else, they're going to turn around and sell it at a premium to the airport in the future.
So I think this one in particular, the reason I think that to bifurcate the 3 million is there are 2 different enterprise funds. So the airport really wanted to get their parcel.
No, I'm not even talking about the 3 million. I'm talking about the 13. I'm talking about
13.
the
Yeah.
filing suit for the money that it's not put in the agenda in June, correct?
Right.
That.
We're almost there.
My understanding is on June 26th,
It's
8
one of
million,
them.
8 million of it is resolved.
That's correct.
We've been at this position now for well over a year, maybe on 2 years. I'm no longer willing to wait any longer. It's costing us just on the $8 million, $250,000 or more a year, right? Although litigation's expensive, and I defer the fact that you're an attorney, so you would definitely know that. But having said that, I believe that we need to put a line in the sand and say, this is it. On June 27, on the $8 million, either you've approved it or we're proceeding with our remedies to recover.
On the 8 million.
On the 8 million. Because
The 5 is not on the agenda.
Because the 5 is not on the agenda.
Not yet.
Right, but when are they going to put it in the agenda? Are we going to say by September, you don't have it in the agenda?
Well, no, and that's why I'll accept Board Member Peterman's amendment, that we also add a second part to it, which is the property sale. So we show seriousness in our pursuit of the 8 million on June 27th, and we also say that, and we can set up a date, end of the calendar year, end of the fiscal quarter 3. I don't know what it is, that if it hasn't all been resolved, or at least the 5 and the 8, because I still think the 3 is questionable. Then we proceed.
I'm okay with that.
We reopen it and
The 13.
And we sell it.
Yeah.
So it's a two-prong effect to let the county know we're serious. 'Cause I think they know we're serious, but I don't know if the elected officials know we're serious.
Understood.
So I accept, you need to set a date for that.
I'll say by December 31st, 2025.
Okay, I accept your amendment.
So can you repeat the motion?
Me?
Yeah, as amended.
As amended. So if on morning of June 27th, we've not received affirmative intent to reimburse from the county commission, we initiate litigation for the $8 million, which would have been on that agenda, and we also proceed, and we also let them know, or the thing, that if the 8 million and the 5 million, the two amounts, are not done by December 31st, we will then reopen it for rebidding and sale.
Okay.
Is that okay?
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Motion to approve.
Second.
So we have a first and a second. I just need to understand a little bit more discussion, please.
Absolutely, of course.
So we're saying that the day after the Board of County Commissioners meeting, that motion doesn't pass, or there is no resolution for the 8 million, that we're going to give them until the end of the year to resolve it? Because you wanted to file a lawsuit after to recover the 8 million.
Correct.
But then the motion was that they have until the end of the year to resolve the two, so that those two things don't match.
Yeah, I see where you're going. I'm good with setting some closer date, other than December 31st.
Is this something that, I don't think that we're litigation attorneys, that's why we have a wonderful general counsel that could maybe guide us and help us create, like, I think the idea is that we all want to get paid. We all want to get paid as soon as possible, and they owe us the money. So how do we get there? Is it the sale of the properties? Is it litigation? Is it a combination? But at the same time, I don't want to start like a lawsuit and spend a lot of money for something that they're going to pay us anyway. I don't know. This is just me having this discussion, and perhaps General Counsel can enlighten us or give
We
us a
can be
suggestion.
prepared to file suit on the 27th and also engage in pre-suit settlement discussions on a expedited basis and show them our draft complaint and that its filing is imminent and will cost money unnecessarily if we can't come to agreement promptly. And then we will file promptly after the 26th.
But that's only for the 8 million, and why don't we do it for the 5 as well, since they already owe us that money too?
Because the 5 is not on the agenda. It's subject to a traffic study of some kind. And the reason that the December 31st property sale makes sense to be added to this motion is that I want to make sure we get paid on the 5 also. So, and it doesn't mean that we can't subsequently add to our litigation and add the 5 million later. Is that right?
But do we have a deadline then for the 5? I mean, if it's not added into their September board meeting or?
Well, I mean, that's a good point. That's a good point. I mean, we have December 31st date. I think that might be too far out. Maybe we
Yeah,
should bring it
I'm
back.
good if we want to set some other date, which would be maybe by the end of the fiscal year, September 30th.
The problem is I don't know what this traffic study entails or how long that process takes. I just don't know.
We don't know either. We were.
And I don't even know why we're subject to a traffic study, to be honest with you. But I'm being generous with my fellow county people.
We questioned the same thing. We questioned the same thing. We didn't understand why this study had to be completed when the bridge is already built. Regardless what that study yields, we built a bridge on behalf of the county. We need to get paid for it.
And we're
Period.
incurring that traffic
I
study
will say
costs.
that our past board member and ex-secretary is now at DTPW. She's still navigating new waters, but so far she's been a tremendous help. So I'm confident that we have that relationship there that can definitely aid this process.
How far up the county food chain has this matter? Is it gone to
It's gone to the
to the mayor's office
directly
or?
discussing with the DTPW director, and the mayor's office is involved in that discussion.
Yeah, my point of who is going to be sponsoring that item in July or June, sorry.
Correct, and we'll follow up on that. And if I may, I mean, I think it makes sense, to your point, to tie in the, whatever, the 8.2 and the 5 million are in one bucket and pursue that. And then going back to the 3 million, obviously, if we ever got to litigation, if we got there at that point, then handle that separately, just to keep things, easier to
All right. When is the June 26th is the next county meeting? When is the next one after that? Does anybody know?
September. It's somewhere in September because they
September.
skip August.
Okay, and our fiscal year ends September 30th? All right, so I amend the amendment, if we can, to bring the property sale to end of our fiscal year,
End of our fiscal year.
end of our fiscal year.
Theirs or ours?
Ours is September, is it not?
No,
Ours
theirs
is June,
is
July.
September.
Ours is June
June, July.
30th.
June
And
30th.
theirs
Is
August. Is
The
October.
county's is September 30th.
September 30th.
That's the end.
Right.
Okay, so their calendar year.
Their calendar year.
Their fiscal year. Right, we use fifth space, that's right.
That's without potential completion of that traffic study. We don't know when that traffic study is to be finished, right?
No, because we're going to take, I think we're beginning to take the position, and I don't know why we have a traffic study.
Right, understood. I just want to
But
make
we'll
sure.
give them time to work it out, and I know new people are in place and they need to figure out what they want to do and that kind of stuff, and that's fine. But I think what we're basically saying is, at the next board meeting, we expect to get paid the 8, and in the following board meeting, we expect to get paid the 5.
Understood.
That's our position as an agency. I think that's what we're saying in a runabout way with a potential lawsuit and then with a property sale. But that's what we're saying.
And board member Pages, it looks like the next board meeting is in July 16th.
Perfect. So September 30th date is more than enough time for them to pay us.
And so we can, just to be clear, we'll incorporate the September date into the contract, the sale contract for the 3 parcels.
You okay with that?
Yes. So if the motion passes to pay us the 8 million, we don't follow suit to collect the 8 million, but we wait until September 30th to pursue the 5 million. So let's say they approve the 8 million, we don't do anything, and then we wait until September 30th to see if they purchase the land or paid us the 5 million, or we'll file suit for the 5 million and rebid the land. Is that?
Correct. It's
Everybody's
an
on board?
and. It's an and.
And.
It's both. It's both. And one addresses the 8 and the other addresses the 5.
So September is that date for
End of
the
September.
right-of-way consideration, not really what happens in July for the $8 million, because we're waiting on the totality of it to consider selling the land. Is that?
Correct. We're waiting until September 30th to sell the land. I mean, the lawsuit, I truly believe that they're going to pass it, and the lawsuit is not going to be necessary. We're just trying to accelerate getting paid instead of just waiting indefinitely, right? Jason, and if you have to file suit for the 8, you can amend the complaint to add the 5? Or would it have to be a separate complaint?
I think we could amend the complaint. We may have to add additional parties depending on the funds involved, but maybe not. And I will also say that I'll make the formal request as general counsel for executive session added to the next board meeting, July 16th. Hopefully it's not necessary, but just to procedurally make that formal request at this meeting, I'll do that right now, assuming this passes.
Perfect.
In case we needed to discuss something in a shade meeting.
Shouldn't we perhaps then wait for the lawsuit until July 17th? to file the lawsuit? We're already in June.
Right. That would be in your discretion. We could prepare it and have it on file.
I'm trying to save us some money.
I know you are, but I'm trying to give a different message.
Okay.
So you can make the amendment. I don't know. I'm not accepting the amendment, July 30th.
September 30th works.
No, but there's 2 days we're
No,
working
no,
on
there's
now.
2 dates.
Litigation,
8 and 5.
right. 8 and
June
5.
27th.
We're June 27th,
July 6th.
September 30th.
Yeah, listen, they have another meeting in July, so I think that
2 meetings in July.
Yes, July 1st and July 16th.
Okay, so 2 meetings in July.
Yeah, so I think what General Counsel was proposing is to prepare the litigation and not file the litigation until we give them ample opportunity till the end of September, and then we would file there. No? Is that not what you're saying?
No.
No, let's, I'm glad you brought that up. Let's make sure we're clear. And
Yeah.
maybe, we're looking with two amounts here, the 8 million and the $5 million.
So if the $8 million is
The
not
$8 million
passed,
is now.
we file,
is-
and then amend.
Right. With proper pre-discussion and everything else, that could take a little bit of time. It's not overnight. I'm sure you guys know how to handle that. But they understand that we expect to be paid on the 26th. Yes, our relationship will deteriorate at that point in time, of course. But that's okay. That's fine. Apparently 2 years of friendly discussions haven't worked. So now we're going to proceed down our road, the only avenue we have left on the $8 million. And then the $5 million, which is really what they want, we're using a stick and a carrot to try to get this done, is that they want the property. So if by September 30th they've not come around for the second amount or any amount, then we proceed to sell the property at large, and then we'll go to war with the county.
Okay, understood.
Look, it's not my preferred route, but we've been trying for 2 years to get this thing done, and they basically ignore us, and they play around with us, and they say tomorrow and next week and maybe in a traffic study. We're done. As an agency, I think the message I want to give, and if accepted by the rest of the board, is that we're done. No more. New process.
I have a question. Since their fiscal year ends now on September 30th, they're having major budget issues and deficits for the following year. So do they have any money in the budget for this year for those amounts?
So the 8.2 has already been appropriated,
Right.
and the 5 doesn't come from the county, it comes from the developer as part of the impact fees for the development.
The developer.
The developer is responsible as part of the impact fees to pay for that.
But the developers already paid those impact fees to the county?
Yes, I've gotten confirmation that now that those 5 million are fully funded.
Oh, well, then there's no reason for them not to pay it.
Correct. The money's sitting in the accounts.
Yeah, I think the issue the county's had in the past is they do it tied by phases, right? And phase 1 was supposed to be the redevelopment of the actual park and ride, which is where the 5 million was going to come. I'm not sure of the exact reason, but the phasing changed. And so the developer put impact fees for a different phase, not for phase 1, because now that becomes the last phase. That's why that money was never there. So the county's been working on moving those to actual phase 1 so they can compensate us for the bridge.
Okay.
All right.
So after much discussion, those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Opposed say nay. So the motion passes. Jason, pass it on to you.
Yeah, don't mess this up.
He never does.
No
We have
pressure.
the best law firm representing us.
And before the meeting concludes, may I just express my appreciation for all the work of Chairwoman Cancio, having been engaged even a couple of months before the governor even acted on the legislation on the Greater Miami Expressway Agency Act, and I've been defending acts of the legislature for the past 25 years. I think, and I've worked on the reestablishment of state agencies and type 2 transfers like this, and I've never seen kind of the obstacles that we saw here 6 years later, and having seen 4 of these board members come in and the fortitude in handling this situation led by Chairwoman Cancia. Thank you for that. It's been an extraordinary project, and appropriate that your last board meeting is presiding with the plan of transfer agreement approved. The entire project implementation of the legislation is complete upon your, right as you end your last meeting. So thank you for everything and appreciate all you've done.
Thank you, Jason. You have been along us this whole time, and we appreciate very much your service and getting us here, because it wasn't easy. So
Thank you.
thank you. Mr. Garcia, any final, well, we didn't discuss the financial report.
Well,
I know-
before the executive director concludes his report, were you done?
Yeah, pretty much. I was just going to say thank you, but Jason took the words out of my
I'm not
mouth,
going
Madam Chair.
anywhere.
But
I
I
am
know
not
you,
going
we'll still
anywhere.
see you
Sorry to
just
steal
sitting, next to where you are now. But no, that will be the conclusion of my report.
I wanted to see if we can get an update on the search for a new executive director, if you can talk to us a little bit about that.
I would defer to our HR. Is Michelle here?
No.
Sandy, do you want to take that?
So I know that as of yesterday, we were up to almost 900 applicants. So HR has been vetting through, making sure that the minimum quals are met, and to bring to the selection committee the ones that qualified based upon your requirements.
I'll try to address that because the timeline has been set since early May, mid-May. I believe all of us received an email on that.
Yeah, the timeline changed, though.
The timeline did change. The timeline did change because of the fact that we were getting a lot of interest, and because the complexity of the process and how we want to do it, in the sense that we want to give ample time between the stages, and we'll go through the stages in a second. We did. It did change. And while our intention was to release our interim director back to the FDOT as early as possible, he has agreed, and I think FDOT has agreed, to allow it to go on a little bit longer, and not allow us to extend the timeline, to make sure that when we decide this as a board, we have done everything possible to do it right, and not speed it up, and not. So yeah, it's a prolonged process, but we're not in jeopardy because we have a very competent interim director in the process, and it allows us the luxury of, during the summertime, be able to properly do the process. So as it sits now, just for the general public, we're looking at a June 20th cutoff of the open enrollment. There's 900, that's true, but there's probably 50, 60, I don't know what the number is, of truly qualified candidates, and that's a manageable number, and that's one that we feel comfortable being able to go through. I don't know who's in there, we haven't seen it. HR is handling that part of the vetting process. On July 21st, we'll bring that down to a top 10, top 15 number. There's no exact number, depends on the candidates and depends on the board, on the executive search committee deciding what's the right number at that point. We'll do a much deeper dive on those 10 or 15 or whatever number it is. Somewhere around August 14, we'll arrive at a finalist. It could be 3, it could be 5, it could be 2, but it'll be a number that's manageable. And then during the month of August into September, we'll give the opportunity for every board member to have one-on-ones with those final 2 or 3 candidates. And then on September 15th, we intend to select our executive director.
July 21st is when the subcommittee meets?
July 21st is when the subcommittee meets.
Okay.
Yes.
If we can get the invite because I have not gotten that. Oh,
Yeah, she's going to send it out.
then that's why.
The secretary has agreed to send it out as soon as we close the June 20th open series. And this allows all constituents, all parties, all to get involved and be able to process. We're doing this as transparent and as open as possible, protecting the rights of the applicant, but also making sure it's in the right interest of the agency.
May I think I mentioned this before, but could we have at least 5 that we get to meet instead of 3 like we had last time? Like,
Sure.
yeah.
We're not going to do what we did last time, which is just each of you will have the time to have coffee, Zoom call, lunch, dinner, whatever you guys want to do with each of the 5. Of three. I think it says three. But three is not set in stone, and we talked about that, I think, in the
Workshop.
workshop. Three is not set in time. We'll decide as a subcommittee what the right number is. I mean, we may have 6 very extremely qualified that we really want to consider, then we'll do 6. We'll just have a lot of lunches, a lot of individual meetings, but that's probably the nature of the process. But we want to make sure that each board member has quality time with that candidate and makes a decision based on that, not on anything else, not if they were a good presenter or a bad presenter or they were boring or whatever it is. Because we each know, by this time, we know exactly what we want in an interim director.
And if I may, Madam Chair, while we're on the subject of personnel action, I do want to add that we do have a current advertisement for a chief engineer position. So that's a position that's going to be reporting to our COO. So that advertisement is out there currently. I'm not sure when it closes.
There's no closing date.
There's no closing date. And so that's open, so that's good. And I also want to announce that we do have a new maintenance manager, and that's Carlos Torres. And I'm not sure if he's here.
He's addressing an incident.
Okay. He's doing his job right now. But that's also a position that reports to the COO. So that's a positive move for us. So that's it from me.
Board Member Pages.
Yeah, there's one more issue that we may want to bring up and discuss, not at this meeting, but in a future meeting, is I would like, because of the nature of the executive director, the chief engineer, a number of stuff, I would like us to review as an agency that relationship, that structure, our executive management structure, as it relates to the executive director, the chief engineer, the chief operating officer, and who can remove whom in that process? Do we want an all-powerful executive director, or do we want something that will ensure continuity and make it less subject to political process? I don't know. I don't have an answer for that. But I think before we make a decision on the executive director, we have a meeting coming up, and maybe even a second meeting. We may want to review that, discuss that, and maybe come back with some recommendations on how to structure that.
Could we have a workshop for that?
You're still determined.
I'm just putting out there because I thought that the budget workshop was very helpful, and we just talked mostly about the budget, and I just think that about the structure and governing, it's something that should not really be part of.
I agree, and I think we need to make sure we have again, and I've said this before, but we're not going to be around forever. This board's not here for a lifetime. At least I'm definitely not.
No.
And we want to make sure we add and provide real continuity in this agency, and no longer, or at least best we can, remove a lot of the political influence and discussion. It's always going to be there. It's the nature of the position, of the job, but remove some of it and make sure that there's proper balances and checks and balances on the agency. And I'm speaking very broad based, and I'm not sure exactly where I'm heading on this. I really don't have an endpoint. I just think since we're bringing in now the second permanent director, I think it's time for us to have a discussion on how we want to see it long term.
Yeah, and we should probably, if we are going to have that conversation, we should have it sooner better than later.
I agree.
Because the new interim, or the new executive director should know what they're getting into.
I agree.
Right?
I
So
agree.
they should know if they're going to be, there's going to be unity of command where that person is going to be the person, and then, or is it going to be almost like a system where we would have control and hiring decisions over multiple?
Absolutely agree.
Yeah,
Absolutely agree. And it will impact our decision on who we choose and how we choose the process, right?
Right.
Do we want someone more interactive with the state officials and the county officials? Do we want more of a technical person? I think those are important discussions. I think there's nothing wrong with having those discussions and as a board deciding this is how we want to run the agency. And we've assumed, in essence, the MDX structure, but it doesn't mean that's right or wrong. It might be perfect, but I don't know if it is right or wrong.
Right.
So If you want to propose a workshop, I think that's a good idea, and then we'll go from there.
Yes, Vice Chair Perez.
Yeah, no. Workshop makes sense, and we shouldn't limit it to if people are in town or not. I mean, if we can do via Zoom,
Yeah.
just for expediency, we should go ahead and do that.
You know what, I'm perfectly fine doing it via Zoom if everybody is on board with that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, yeah, so if the executive director could help us organize with the secretary a date for our next board meeting.
That's good. Yeah, we'll circulate some dates for the board.
So I know that it's been 2 hours already, but any final words on the interim financial report that we received today?
Sandra?
So this is always good news. That's the one stable and robust thing about us. We're very financial.
What are you talking about? There's many good things about us.
I love this one because I just love seeing things go up and things being favorable.
And expenses going down. I like that.
Yes. And the combination of two, the revenues going up and the expenses coming a little bit down, so it gives us a great net revenue ratio. So we're doing well, and this is another evidence of what we're doing financially and that we're on the right track. The second page is just the history from 2021 to 2025 to just give you an idea of how well we're doing.
A couple of highlights or a couple of issues. Our net revenue is up 7% year over year. That's a big number. That's a big
huge
number in our business. So that shows a lot of attention to the expenses. And I believe, although I've been told not yet, that we're seeing some of the improvements. Go ahead.
I do have an update for you.
Thank you. I knew we were missing something, which is a very important component. So I appreciate that.
Board members, I'm very happy to report. So the repairs that the board approved under the project for State Road 112, we have some good numbers to compare from fiscal year 24 and 25. So on State Road 112, we're up 2.52%, which if you remove what our traffic and revenue consultant assumes as just natural growth, which is 1.5%, it yields about 1.02% increase for the repair. So it was definitely a positive thing that we did, and it's going to pay itself off in roughly 2.5 years, because that was an area that we were continuously spending MOT dollars to go fix and repair. So the increase in revenue without accounting for normal growth would pay for itself in about 2.5 years. And obviously moving forward, it's only going to be beneficial for the agency. So it is good.
That's
favorable.
something we should be proud of.
Yes.
And something that we'll make sure the public understands.
Right.
The other issue, the second page is actually very good as far as seeing trends over the last 5 years, and you can see a very steady net revenue increase even during a very complex period of time with our litigation and everything else. I think the coming years we'll even see greater improvements in that. I'm very optimistic on that side, especially when we start doing the financial side of the equation, which we discussed earlier in the meeting. We do have some work to do with the credit ratings and the agencies. There's one in particular that's not very cooperative, and we'll figure out how to handle it.
We're working with them, and as a matter of fact, right after this meeting, that you have approved the plan of transfer agreement, that's one thing that's going to be sent to them.
Our
right
financial advisors or future financial advisors will help us with that too, because that's a big deal, and it's dragging down a little bit of our ability to operate.
We just want to shake off that bad baggage.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, that's it.
I do have like a final comment. After all these years being in the agency, I still did not know that there are restrictions in how you paint concrete bridges. Did you know that?
I didn't know this.
Okay, because I've gotten complaints that people cannot see the lines on the concrete overpasses. And I was speaking with Rafael saying, why can't we just paint, I don't want to see this without being painted. I want the markings. And it's like, well, they are markings, but there's restrictions. I don't know if there's any way around it, but this is something that bothers me. And maybe we have to live with it, but if there's any way that we can have like markings on the concrete overpasses. I don't know, perhaps Secretary Iglesias can enlighten me on this.
We have very specific ways to do marking on concrete decking. Most of the lane lines are actually tape, and they have a black kind of outline to them,
Right.
so that you get a little bit of contrast in the lane lines from the white color of the concrete deck. If you're referring to the red bus only lanes, that's a different story, because I think that may have to do with applying that type of paint to the deck. So I'm not sure. We don't do red markings on our structures, so that's something that's kind of unique to State Road 836. But as far as the lane lines go, there is a little bit of contrast that can be included
They're very hard to
with
see.
tape. But it's very specific. We only allow one type of material to be put on decks, bridge decks.
I just think it's dangerous. I think we should have more visible markings. But obviously,
I'm not sure what's out there, but there should be some contrast between the lane lines and the deck with the tape that's allowed.
so if you would indulge me, Claudio, could you please check this out and see
Yes,
if we can
yes.
improve the markings? Because former board member Concio, my father, is one of those that is always nagging me about the markings on the road, so I have to live with that.
Yes. We do follow FDOT standards, and so we do use tape on our bridges. We're actually going through this system-wide, and some corridors specifically are going to go through a full rehabilitation to pavement markings. So yes, we do use the high contrast tape with the black outline. From that picture, a couple thousand feet up, it's not that visible, but yes, I can assure you that our bridges are signed, but we're still going through the efforts of going through the entire system and refreshing all of our pavement markings. Regarding the red, that was actually a recommendation from the installer, because we use epoxy. It's not normal thermoplastic paint, and the epoxy basically would just peel off in short order, so they wouldn't give us warranty on it. And so all the asphalt is painted red, but the bridges in that area do not, because we would be redoing it every...
No, I'm okay with not having the red, but I would like just the lane markings to be more visible.
Yes,
Possible.
understood.
Okay.
I have one final comment here. We've killed a lot of trees today. And I see my fellow board member with a beautiful marked up iPad process. So technology must exist, because Secretary Iglesias is spectacular. I'm jealous about what he has. I know it's his equipment, but since you're the official secretary, and I just learned that, can we combine a Save the Tree project with a technology project and see how it is we can do this better?
I agree, because I also had the same
Okay.
comment.
And since you're the official secretary, that falls under your, I'm sorry, I just came up with a job, but
I will speak with the team
Okay.
to come up with something.
And I also
And
request...
I don't know what requirements there are in terms
I
of
don't
having
either.
to give us
I don't either.
some kind of print. I don't know. So all will be explored, absolutely.
Man, I think nobody would be happier than our board secretary, Lisa, who had, I was watching her compiling this thing all week last week, so we'll look into
And I
that.
think I mentioned it maybe once before, but maybe not. Maybe I thought I was going to mention it and I forgot. I'm an old man. But on the agenda, having the agenda hyperlinked in the sense of where you could, on the agenda, you can
Table
go
of
right to
contents.
the item instead of having to scroll through 400 or 500 pages looking for the item. Where you, on the agenda, it's hyperlinked where you go to the item, boop, and it takes you right to the item, even if it's a 400 or 500 page document.
We did discuss that in your briefing, and we will implement it for the next one.
Okay.
Okay, so that's wonderful. Finally, announcements. The next governing board meeting will take place on August 14th at 9 a.m., but we plan to have a workshop before. Board members, are there any questions, announcements, staff direction, or final comments from board members before we adjourn?
Yes.
Yes.
So I'd like just
Go.
to congratulate our outgoing chair for your
thank you.
leadership and dedication.
Thank you.
And also to welcome our incoming chair. And we look forward to your guidance and working together with you as well.
Thank you, Board Member Rigo. Hearing no additional comments, I adjourn this meeting at 11:16 a.m. And thank you, board members. Meeting is adjourned.